Number 1. Pizza. I've been delivering pizzas for several years. I'm also a big horror fan. I have, over the years, watched a lot of videos on YouTube that had scary things happening to delivery drivers. I have never thought that anything would happen to me like that, but I did eventually have a horrifying experience that definitely belongs among the other stories. This happened during a really fierce snowstorm. I had known it was going to be snowing pretty bad before I even went to work. It was lightly snowing before that, and a little harder as I was driving to work. Normally, really snowy days were the days that we were the busiest. No one wanted to go out. They all wanted to stay in and order delivery. So I was expecting a whole lot of tips. This day was very different, however. The snowstorm turned into a blizzard, and unusually, we didn't have as many orders as we were used to. Most of the other drivers decided to go home early, which left me the only one. That was okay, but it was weird being in the store, with the blizzard just completely enveloping the world. It was hard to see outside the window, and for the majority of time that I was working, I was sitting there just staring out at the snow, waiting for something to happen. I had a few orders, and driving in the snow was hard, so I guess I was lucky I wasn't getting that much. The only thing that really bothered me was the boredom of sitting there staring at the snow. After about 2 hours of getting absolutely no orders, we got an order finally. It was only for a single pizza, so I suppose any tip wouldn't even cover my gas money. But it was something to do. I set out for the address. It wasn't one that I'd ever seen before. It was also out of town, which was a bit of an aggravation to have to drive that far in the snow. It took me a while to get where I was going, but thankfully I had the GPS so I wouldn't get lost. When I finally got to the address, I looked at the house and wondered who could live in such a place. It didn't look abandoned, but it absolutely did look like it was very old. There were no lights on inside the house or outside the house. There were no cars in the driveway either, and no one had taken any time that day to shovel the driveway. There was even more snow on the driveway than there was in the streets. Knowing I would get snow in my shoes, I grabbed the pizza and went and walked through the snow to get to the door. It was such a pain, not only from the snow, but it was also at nighttime, and I had no house lights to see where I was going. When I got to the porch, which also hadn't been shoveled or even swept, I trudged over to the door and knocked on it. When no one answered, I tried ringing the doorbell, and there didn't seem to be a bell. I knocked another time, and still no one came to the door. After the third knocking, I was beginning to get irritated, so I went to the front window, and I looked in on the house. I was surprised to see that the house was deserted. There was no furniture or anything like that in the house. I began to believe that even though the pizza had already been paid for, this was some sort of lousy prank. It was when I turned around, and I noticed there was someone on the driveway behind me. I only saw him as a colorful blob in the snow, since it was so hard to see, but he was coming right at the house. He got to the steps and was coming up to the porch. I began thinking that this person must have been who ordered the pizza, and maybe he just went out before I arrived. But as he came up the porch, I could see him a whole lot clearer. He was a very creepy-looking big man, and he definitely did not look happy at all. "Where the hell are your keys?" he yelled at me before he lunged at me. I dropped the pizza when the guy hit me. I didn't drop to the ground though, which was a bit of a strong comfort. The guy pushed me up against the wall, trying to hold me back with one arm, and then trying to search my pockets, it seemed. If you have ordered pizza before, you probably know what was going on. Most delivery drivers leave their cars running while they bring your pizza out to you. so then they can just run back into the car and leave. But I'm one of the ones who refuses to do that. I turn the car off, although I leave the lights on, and put my keys in my pocket. This guy must have ordered the pizza, thinking that he could then steal my car, while I delivered the pizza to the empty house. And no, I didn't realize that right then. I was too panicked and trying to defend myself to have any thoughts like that. The guy was strong, but he was not a lot stronger than me. I was able to fight him back and keep him from getting my car keys. He was trying to check my coat pockets, but they were actually in my pants pocket. Not knowing what else to do, I reached into my pocket and I took my keys out. I held them in my hand in such a way that when I punched the guy, the keys would hit him and hopefully hurt him. It took a few punches, but I was eventually able to daze the guy. I wasn't able to push him to the ground, but I did good enough to get away from him so I could try running back to my car. Well, running in the snow was not the easiest thing to do, but at least if he came after me, he would likewise be hampered by the snow. I made it to my car and the door was unlocked, so I got in and I locked it before the man caught up with me. While I was getting my keys to start the car, the guy slammed up against my car window. He was beating on it and I half expected it to break, but it didn't. He pressed his ugly face up against my window, smearing blood on it. I guess I broke his skin when I hit him with the keys. I didn't care, but it likely just added to the man's anger. I got the car started and began to pull away. It wasn't easy on the street, and it was very slippery. The guy tried getting in front of the car to stop me, but I made it clear I would run him over if he did. Eventually, I was able to pull away and start down the road. Still angry at me, the guy tried coming after me, but he gave up when he realized there was no way that he could catch me. I drove away and went back to the store. I had to call my boss and tell him about it. There were no managers in the store at the time. He told me to call the police, which I did, and they came out. All they could do was file a report, though. Eventually they found that the credit card used to order the pizza had been stolen, so it was not able to lead us to this man. So I don't know who he is, or what his intentions were with my car. Number 2. By the Fire. Right after high school graduation, 4 of my friends and I decided to go on a trip to a cabin in the woods the summer before college. Basically, it was a way that we were going to get a chance to drink and smoke weed away from the family. We were going to have a whole week to party with just the 5 of us and no one else in the way. The cabin was really great. The only thing is that I don't think that we realized just how far out into the woods this cabin was. The road that we took there eventually stopped being a gravel road and was just a bunch of dirt. There were large, I guess you would call them potholes, in the ground, and it was difficult to get around them. Fortunately, we had enough supplies to get us through the week that we wouldn't have to go back to town for any reason. I definitely did not want to ride on that road too often. The first and second nights at the cabin were just fine. We had a really fun time, and there was a surprisingly large amount of things to do out there. Each night, we would light up a fire in the fire pit and sit on some logs surrounding it, talking, smoking, drinking, and just laughing and having a good old time, long into the night. On the third night, however, we had a really strange experience. My buddy Tom kept telling me that he heard something out in the woods. Tom was a very paranoid type, though, and no one else heard anything. We thought it was just his imagination, so we even began teasing him, like he expected Bigfoot to be out there. We all had a pretty good laugh. That wasn't until, after I took a drink of my beer, I looked down and then up again. I saw something coming out of the woods and approaching us. I don't want to say that I screamed. It was more of a yelp. But it got the attention of everyone as I pointed to a dark figure coming toward us. Everyone was alarmed for a moment, but the figure came into view, and it was just another guy, probably a few years older than us, who was out in the woods. He held his hands up, indicating to us that he didn't mean any harm. He told us he was just camping in the area and had a tent not far from us. He smelled the fire and thought he would come check it out. My friend Joe invited the guy to sit with us at the campfire. We had more than enough beer and weed to go around. The man accepted very quickly and sat down and began talking with us. At first the guy seemed pretty normal, just your average college-age guy. He looked like he was probably a jock by the way he was built, but he was also very talkative and easily fit into our conversations. But after a while, the guy began to creep me out a bit. He gave his name as Tyler, but only after we had asked him a few times. That made me think he was trying to think of a fake name to give us. Although, you would think it would be easy to give a fake name. He also didn't talk about himself, always avoiding questions that we asked about where he was from and what he did for a living. He would always bounce those questions back on us. The only thing that he did tell us was that he came out to this area of the woods every summer to camp on his own. But he never rented the cabins, preferring to stay in a tent. Some of the things that he said were unnerving too. He would try to steer the talk to more morbid subjects and scary stories. That was okay because, hey, we were sitting around a campfire. But he only wanted to talk about scary or creepy things. Eventually, he got to telling us a really creepy story about the woods around us. It wasn't something any of us believed really, but it was frightening nonetheless. He told us that there was a family out in the woods. They had been out there for decades. They hated civilization and kept as far away from it as possible. To keep from inbreeding, the family members would come out of the woods during camping season and kidnap males or females, whatever they needed to keep their family line going. He told us that there were a lot of people who had gone missing in these woods, and that we had better be careful out there if we eventually wanted to leave. Even though I didn't believe the story, I have to admit that it scared me. Just the idea that something like that might be able to happen was pretty terrifying. Well, we went on to talk about other things, but Tyler kept giving me these creepy glares. It was really unnerving. Eventually I had to get up and go to the bathroom. You'd think that I would have just gone out in the woods, but I hated doing that. So I walked over to the cabin to use the bathroom in there. It was a pretty modern cabin with working water and a bathroom. I was about to go back to the fire. I opened the door and I stepped out onto the porch. When I did, I heard something off to the back of me. Turning, I saw Tyler was there. He was holding a knife in his hand. He lunged at me and tried to grab me. I was fortunate and able to avoid him. It was close though. I turned to run, and when I took off, I felt his hand touch me on the shoulder. But it wasn't enough. I ran shouting along the way as I made my way back to the fire. Apparently Tyler hadn't run after me. I told my friends what had happened. They told me that after I had left to use the bathroom, Tyler had excused himself, telling us that he had to get back to his tent and get some sleep. Instead, he had went up to the cabin and had tried to attack or abduct me. One of my friends joked that maybe Tyler had a sister that needed someone to breed with, but I didn't find that very funny. Two of the other guys, the bigger ones, went looking for Tyler. I am pretty sure they planned on beating the shit out of him, but they didn't find him. The rest of the trip was not very pleasant for me. I kept thinking that Tyler would be there any time I turned around, but I didn't run into him again. We searched during the day for any campers, but other than coming across another cabin, we never found the tent. When we left, we we found out that they didn't allow people to use tents out in that area. Any customers were required to rent one of the cabins. This just added to my fears. I never wanted to go camping in that area ever again. And although we did rent cabins in different areas, nothing scary ever happened again. Number 3. Weird. I've been having some really strange problems. I live in a house all by myself. My parents and one of my best friends have a key to the house. Other than that, no one really comes into my house, and this is the way that I like it. A lot of the strange experiences began happening while I was asleep, so at first I didn't give them any mind. They were usually odd noises that would wake me up in the middle of the night. I would actually hear the noises. The first were voices, usually calling out my name or similar things. Those continued until one night I was woken up by someone pounding on my bedroom door. I was scared, thinking that maybe it was my parents or my friend that had a key and they had a problem and were coming to the house to get some help. The knocking would continue until after I had woken up. When I got to the door, there was no one there. The first time it happened, I went searching the house to see if somebody was in it. However, no one was in the house anywhere, and the door was locked. Yet I knew that I had heard something. After it happened a few times, I was told that I could be having a dream while I was awake. So if I heard the knocking noises in my dream, I might be able to hear them when I wake up. That would explain why I would be awake and still hear the knocking. I don't know if this is true. Still, at the time, it was enough for me to finally stop worrying about it. It happened a few more times, and although it woke me up, I quit getting up to check the door. Maybe a month after I stopped checking the door, something else happened. I sleep on my belly all the time. I was tired, and I felt someone slap me on the butt a few times. I quickly woke up, looking around the room, trying to see who had slapped me on the butt. Like the previous times with the knocking door, no one was there, or in my house. But this rattled me a whole lot more than the knocking had. It took me a very long while to be able to get back to sleep that night. Sometime later, that happened again a few more times. It wasn't always on my butt. Occasionally it was on my leg or my arm. But much like the knocking, I soon stopped searching to see if anyone was in the house. I thought it was still a waking dream kind of thing. Sometime later, I was sitting in my living room chair, reading a book. I actually had the TV on too, but the sound was turned down. I often did this just so I could have some more light in the room. I was engrossed in my book. Suddenly, there was a lot of loud noise in the room, as if someone had turned up the volume on the television. Looking up, I dropped my book when I saw a man standing next to my television. He had turned the volume up and was looking at me. I only looked at the man for a few seconds before he suddenly wasn't there anymore. All of the past events went running through my head, and the one thing that I hadn't considered was that there might be a ghost in my house. This was mostly because I had never believed in ghosts, but I had seen this happen, and the volume had turned up. I was not asleep this time, as I had been with the previous incidents. After seeing the man, all the strange things stopped happening. I had my friend stay with me for a while to see if he would experience anything. He never did. I often wonder if the happenings will start up again. I still live in the house, and nothing has yet. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. First, I want to thank all my paid Patreon subscribers, starting with my two VIPs, Chiamerah Cat and Pixie 8. I also want to thank Stinky Ooze, EricaOdd, Tracy Sellars, Chronic J, and Heidi H. If you're interested in joining my Patreon, the link is in the description to the channel. I want to thank anybody who has shared the GoFundMe for that cat. or anybody who has donated. So far, we've made $273 for the cat, so thank you for that very much. Also, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh my god, 2 videos in a few days. Well, I'm trying to find good stories and to keep that up. I also need to apologize to people who were looking for a Pride video at the end of June. I have no intention of not doing these videos, so please don't worry. I just haven't been able to get any stories lately. If you'd like to see a video like this and you have one, or know somebody who has some, please let me know and where to send it to. Other than that, if you like the video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please hit the subscribe button and the bell so you'll be notified of new videos. Leave me a comment and let me know what you thought of the video, and please share it with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you want narrated on Killer Orange Cat, my email address is in the description. Now, you can also join my Patreon as a free member, and these are my current free members: Anthony Bowers, Remi, Venikins, Rose Metro, Woofer McWooferson, Cindy Cleveland, Vanapira Rayne, William H., Alien Unicorn 13, Kathryn Lynch, The Bama Guy 334, Michael Vasquez, Bonnie Lynn, Collet Bond, Krista Pike, Prince UVA, HF Creations, Bonnie Gibbs, Linda Moore, DJ Lira, and Evil Black Cat. But most importantly, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.